Yep.
I want to thank everybody. Head over to www.johnbartoloshow.com. I want to thank all the sponsors. Gallo Technologies, Rhino Metals, Galco Leather Holsters, Blackwater Ammunition, Right On Optics, Volquartsen Firearms. Scott Volquartsen will be here soon. Counting down the days for that. That'll be fun. Got a special guest today. This is a great one. One of my oldest friends in the business. One of my friends I respect the most, and I don't throw that around that often. It's a big compliment. This is going to be a lot of fun. I want him to tell his story. I would feel safe in saying me and this guy have pretty much seen all there is to see in the firearms business.
Yeah,
I would feel good about that. Wait, don't say anything. I got to hype you.
All right.
I got the one and only Jonathan Turnbow. What's going on?
Hey.
Listen, tell everybody your story. How does this happen? How do you get here?
How do I get here?
How'd you end up in this business?
Man, it started out with a company called Techniclip.
That's terrifying. Keep going. I'm sorry. It's terrifying that I remember that, but go ahead. Sorry, everybody.
No, Techniclip was the introduction to the industry for me. Techniclip was a concealed carry product, right? There's one guy slinging it, and he hired me on to do his marketing. And from there, the rest is history. No, that product did really well. In 2 years, we sold 200,000 units. Really built a community around that EDC pocket dump life. And
EDC life.
And then I found that there was this ginormous company in the city that I lived in that I had never heard about. I had never heard about it. Action Target. That they had never put anything into social media, anything into really marketing outside of if you want to buy a shooting range, you want to build one.
And you swooped in with your cape on.
I'm saying I lived 10 minutes from headquarters. I didn't know it was a thing. I didn't know they existed. And I was going to the trade shows, you know? So, yeah, that's what happened. I got to start with Action Target, and that went really well. 4 years at Action Target.
And it was a good time.
It was a good time. A lot of love for Action Target. Great product.
Is the business all that you hoped it would be?
The firearms business? The Action Target business?
No, the firearms business in general.
Yeah. I don't have any complaints. I've never not loved what I've done. Right?
Talk closer into the mic.
I've never not loved
the
what
mic
I've
moves.
done.
You don't have to go through the fucking tape.
This is my first mic. I don't know. No, I've always loved what I've done. I always loved going to work the next day. I always loved the collaboration. I mean, it's not without its faults, the industry, no. But is it the spot for me? Yes. Have I committed myself to never being in another industry? Pretty much. I couldn't do it. I've had coworkers, I've had employees that have left for a killer pay upgrade, but they're going to the beauty industry. They're in the MLM space. They're doing makeup. That would completely change my life. I can't do that.
No, but it's funny because I think there's a lot of things people take for granted about this business, and I spend a lot of time beating this business up, and I don't mean to. It's not my intention. But there are a lot of great people, good people. Shit, I've had probably 100 of them on this show in this business.
Right.
And great families. I think of like Neil and Kate, just so many great families and people. Michelle and Michael, all the people. But the reality is, I think what people don't understand about this business, like any business, is it's all about relationships.
Yeah.
And we all try to form the relationships we think are best for us in business and in life. And I think one of the things taken for granted in this business is that we all have to go sit at the dinner table just like everybody else at the end of the day. Yeah. And I think you and I talk about that a lot. It's like the way people sometimes do business, they do business as if you're not going to see them in the lunch line.
Right.
And that's what always amazes me sometimes. And You know, I don't have to tell you what I've been through and what I've seen and the way people have treated even both of us. And I'm almost like, I almost sometimes want to say, I'm going to see you in the lunch line, cocksucker. Like, you know, like what the fuck is going on? But I think that's, you know, if I was to put a stamp on probably that one drawback is sometimes that gets lost in translation. Yeah. And I think everybody kind of takes for granted that we're all human and we're all trying to get ahead and we're all trying to take the steps. It's who wants to be on the train and who wants to do it with you. But it is a great business. There is no for sure. And I think a lot of that comes from not understanding that it's a small world inside the firearms industry, right? It's a small world. As big as it is, it's a small world. 100%.
Travels.
Yeah, 100%. Now, you obviously, much better than me, made a huge niche for yourself in not just the event planning side, but also
Top golf.
Yeah, no. All the stuff you did is top notch, and everything you touched, and even the range day experience stuff.
Yeah,
and that's something I was never in my realm of skill by any stretch of the imagination. And I think that's something that gets taken for granted. But where we see eye to eye is, I think a lot of companies don't take a long look at the experience. Right. Yeah. And what I say is like the customer, ambassador, client, whatever it is, experience. And I think that's something that gets kind of glazed over in the industry. Why do you think that is?
Because it costs money and it doesn't have an ROI attached to it. That's 100% it. You know, like you don't have a direct revenue coming from that expense.
Right.
And I think that's why that gets glossed over, because there's not a lot of experiential marketing going on. There's not a lot of companies putting budget into that.
Well, you know, you and I both know ROI is the most bastardized term in the industry. It's bastardized. You get most manufacturers, you get an engineer and an owner that get together in a room, and they'll say things like, Jonathan, you know what? What's my ROI on that? You know, oh my God. They'll say, what's my ROI on that? And then you say, well, listen, you have to look at the ROI in its totality, what you're getting out of it, right. The photos, the videos, the this, that, the assets. And I think it's because they don't understand content, and that's one of the things that gets glazed over, and they don't understand content creation. And that's something that I think you can speak to very well, because when you put this stuff together, it's not like the old days when companies come to you and they say, Jonathan, you know, we want some range day stuff. And they're like, we'll give you a case of ammo. And you're like, motherfucker, I have to go rent the, you know, they don't know all that goes into it. The planning, the preparation, everything, pulling the people together, putting the shots together, the edits, the videos. They don't understand all the different nuances, but you take a lot of pride in that and putting those types of programs together. And that's something that I think you really found your niche with. And I hope that companies do come around to understanding you have to get that stuff right.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's incredibly important, both for just ambassadors, your dealers, your distributors, everybody in the equation. And it is a lost art, and I do think it's ROI dependent. What would you suggest to companies that are afraid to take the plunge into stuff like that?
I keep going back to the life cycle of an Instagram post. Like the lifespan. How long does that last? Never. What lasts forever? What always gets hits? YouTube videos will always get views. I mean, at Action Target, our top watched video was of the great one from Springfield Armory. Crap, now I'm having a brain fart.
No, don't. It'll come to you. Whatever the video.
Whatever the video is.
Widget.
We're talking 15, 20 years ago. And it's the top watched video every month on that YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Every month. Because why? Because he was one of the best shooters and just won another national championship this year in single stack. And people still want to learn from him, still want to engage with him. And YouTube lasts forever. Instagram posts 4 seconds. How long does that take you to swipe? But I will say, I learned this, right? I learned about content creation. I'm not a content creator, right? I'm not a content
Don't
creator.
sell yourself
I'm a marketer.
short.
I mean, I can make it happen, but I'm not the guy behind the keyboard.
No, I know. Neither am I.
Or the camera. No, but this is creating
but
right here.
I have a conversation. To say I'm a creator is a little bit of a... Some of the people that produce this might get mad. But I get what you're saying, and I understand it completely. I think a life cycle is one huge component. But I think, and this is something obviously we'll get into in a later podcast with the group, but I think people need to understand when they look at marketing and they look at branding and they want to understand marketing and branding, you can't look at the whole pie, one piece of the pie as the whole pie. You have to look at the whole pie in its totality. And you have to understand where all the pieces fit. It's like building a portfolio of investments. Yeah. And we all invest money, time, effort, energy into different things. So one of the reasons I've always been drawn to the podcast production format, and I don't call it a podcast, whether you call it a tabletop, I know podcast takes on a certain form. What I look at it is, and this isn't me saying this, everybody, so if everyone wants to either think I'm an idiot or a genius, you can go to Gary Vee and complain. It creates what's called a triple arbitrage, where you're yielding 3 or 4 things from one effort. So I sit here, I have a conversation with you, the camera rolls, the video rolls, the photos get taken, the audio rolls. You cannot beat that. No one is going to beat that title. Now, if I suck, I suck. If I'm good, I'm good. But they're not understanding that the game's been gamed against you. So keep doing your photo shoots in mag dumps in a desert. Right. You're gaming against yourself. And then you have guests on that have additional followings or additional whatever.
Yep.
So it's only a matter of time. And how much time do you think I have if I just sit here? Got all the time in the world. All of it. So you have to create systems. That's why I'm a huge systems guy. And when I go into companies, I'm like, do you want to have a content creation system? Or do you want to just run out in the desert and do mag dumps?
Right.
What do you want to do? I'm okay with either, but let's create a plan.
Right. Decide what you want.
Say what you want.
See, and I learned this. Shout out to Greenlight Shooting. Chad Schellebarger, videographer. I saw him as a YouTuber. He did a YouTube video of a range that we built.
I actually saw that video. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, hey, let me take you to lunch, and I viewed him as a YouTuber. You know, he had a following. He was 100,000 plus subscribers, and I was like, let's take him to lunch and talk to him.
He's a streamer.
Man, 4 seconds into that conversation, I realized this kid's just talented, and so he did YouTube. But he's a high-end producer. He's a videographer with talent. He's the producer type. He's gonna sit in the chair and tell you where is what, and he's got all the gear to do high-end production as well if you want. So we sat down and made a plan and figured out how to make him my videographer at the time. And since he's created a great business out of it, maybe he had it before then, I don't know, I won't take credit. but and that has changed from a video perspective that lasts forever. That has changed everything I've done from that video side, because he's been able to actually get high quality content that you don't see a direct ROI on.
Now,
but lasts forever.
I was peeling into this a little bit with Matt last night. It's an interesting question. You and I actually have never talked about this. We brushed around it. And it's a hard question to answer, and we won't be able to get to it in the roundtable, but it's a discussion I'd love to have with you, because we've both been in the marketing director, I use air quotes, space in so many brands. How do you, today in 2020, the $1 million question is to all these brands out there is, how do you build the perfect team? What are the pieces you need, whether it's starting or getting to the next level? What are the components you need, and where do companies go wrong? I want to ask you your thoughts. I'll give my answer after, but I want to ask your thoughts on, you're starting from scratch. They say we got $1 million. Go hire who you need. How would you build it?
How would I build that team? Well, you've got to have the content creation side settled. Graphic designer, videography, you've got to have that all ready to go. The investment in a podcast setting, right, in-house.
Yeah, I know we use the P word, but yeah, you know, because I know it gets
YouTube.
I don't want to
Instagram.
Yeah,
right.
A set. You need
a
set.
A set. Man, the analytics side of it. While
Huge.
You know,
data's everything.
Super important to be able to understand what you're doing, where you're spending, if it works, if it doesn't, and like you said, not look at that as a whole pie. Mm-hmm. That is a piece of the pie. That's a slice. I'd throw that in there, and you've just got to have a team that is built of real people, not, man, what word to use? Like you said, you're going to see people in the lunch line. You know, you've got to have somebody that's going to be the face of the company at all times. You're talking about marketing, right? So anybody that you bring on has to be able to be in front of the camera talking. They have to be able to make that move, to make that presence, to represent your brand. I don't know. It's an interesting thought, though.
No, that's good. Good. I agree with 99. You took the words out of my mouth. 99% of what you said. Now, can you outsource some of those things? Can you have a photographer part-time?
Absolutely.
Can you move a few of those parts to be budget conscious? Yes. I think you 100% need a maestro. And I look at you a lot like me. We have a couple different skills, but we have very similar skills. You're great at networking. You're great with people. You're great at negotiating the deals or putting the deals together. I feel that is the absolute genesis of a marketing department,
right,
if you will.
Right.
And I feel where companies go wrong, if I may, and this is a key component, is they try to sprinkle in too many things at once. Yeah. They try to put in too many things. So they'll have the department set. They'll have a content creation strategy or plan. And nobody's saying it. You and I are both in agreement with this. It doesn't have to revolve around a podcast or this or that, a tabletop. But you have to have a strategy, a consistent strategy to create deliverables. Now, with all that being said, I think having a good full-time web/email newsletter type guy can fit into, and that person might be a hybrid. They may also be your graphic designer, just like your photographer might be your graphic designer.
But not too many things.
Not too many things.
You can't, I mean, those multi-tool people, they're very rare, and they'll get burnt out quickly. So if you're talking about a dream team that's going to last more than a year, you know, you've got to have those specialized categories, because otherwise you give, I mean, I see jobs all the time. People are looking for marketing directors that are ready to graphic design. Like, you want somebody to be the graphic designer. They're completely two different roles, right? And I won't even pretend.
Right.
You know?
No, you're not wrong. And I think the first hybrid person should be the person at the top. I think the person at the top is going to be a little bit of your host, maybe a little bit of your hero, or, you know, whatever. And then maybe they have some camera skill, some gear skill. They understand the production, the gear.
Got to be able to understand it all, whether they're
all the moving parts
behind it all the time. They got to be able to understand.
A lot of people look at what I do and they seek to duplicate it. And the reason it can't be duplicated is because I run guest-based. Right. And if you don't have the book, you don't have the book.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to do it. You do a superior job on the range, developing people, having people, creating that type of production setting, and you have the book to pull it off. Not everybody does.
Right.
So a lot of people go out there, and that's why it deteriorates to, you know, mag dump in a desert. Now, you've been around this game long enough. We can pick apart the good, the bad, and the ugly with so many different brands and so many different brand mistakes. You've been smart in your strategies and the things that you put together. You know, I don't want to get into questions that'll be asked later, but it's interesting how the business has evolved. And one thing I've brought up, Jonathan, quite a few times is we're always affected by the theater we're in. Yeah. And the theater we're currently in is the PPE, COVID, everything else. So it's going to be very interesting, you know, coming up, how those things play out, especially in the firearms business.
Right.
And there's no product out there right now. There's nothing to sell.
No.
So where it goes from here and how brands adjust, I think one of the crucial mistakes they're going to make is now is a great time to participate in a lot of advertising strategies, to keep their name out there, to stay relevant, to let people know what they're up to.
Win market share right now. Don't pull back. Win market share right now. Because nobody has to try to do anything to sell right now. I mean, there's a few different products and niche markets that struggle right now because everybody's hoarding ammo. Targets, for example. Indoor ranges hurt because people are hoarding ammo. Ammo's nowhere to be found, so you can't sell those targets because people aren't shooting them, right? And ammo's what, $500, $600 for a box of
more,
1,000,
80 cents for 5.56.
80 cents for 5.56. But yeah,
no, it's a hard listen. You're making a great point.
But as far as firearms are concerned, holsters, everybody's 12 weeks backed up. Body armor. You don't have to try to sell that stuff right now. You don't have to put in any effort. However, I'm sure all those companies' marketing teams are patting themselves on the back,
Oh,
taking credit for that, right?
we're not going to go there. Now, that's a conversation for later.
Yeah.
But now, my big thing is I want to talk about solutions with you, and now is a great time to forge into gaining market share. And what a lot of companies don't realize is now's a great time to invest in your infrastructure.
Yeah.
To start laying the groundwork internally, to start doing the videos, to start developing the people, stuff like this we're going to be doing with the forums and the roundtables and sharing ideas and going back to the kettle and saying, I know because I sat with these people. This is what's going on.
Yeah.
I've had the conversations. That for me was always the most powerful thing. When I would walk in a room, a lot of times, and you know this, because of the people I was talking to, you couldn't argue with me. I'm like, how are you going to argue? I just sat with these people. This is where this is going. And if you don't believe me, and I think one thing to say, to get your thoughts on, I think the crucial mistake a lot of brands have made or are continuing to make is that failure to level up as the change comes, because you have to, whether you call it omni-channel, whatever it is, you have to start to level up. And all the things, that's what we're trying to do here.
Yeah.
And you have to try to grow your market share. And the only way to do that is to begin to expand. If you think Instagram, see, one of the struggles is always TikTok is like a far off land. It's it's like the moon, Jonathan, to people. It's like, oh my God, we just convinced all the over 50s and 60s that Instagram was viable.
Yeah.
Now you say things like YouTube talking beyond the SKUs. I call it beyond the SKUs. That's a theory I've come up with. Okay. Beyond just the SKUs, the touchable, tangible product, their mind explodes. And you've been in those rooms.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Like you said, it's just so foreign. So foreign, almost as if it's a TikTok.
Oh, TikTok's Mars.
Right.
You know, if the moon is YouTube, TikTok's Mars. But, you know, the key thing is, how do we get people there, and how do we get people to understand that there's a great big audience out there? I think you know this from years of us working together, and it's not a mystery. When we suggested things like fitness, people looked at us like we were crazy.
Yeah.
Fitness is a huge component of shooting, training, tactical industry. Huge component.
Yeah, and the industry's brought that back, right? They've I guess, received the message. A lot of trainers are doing it now. Tony will tell you the stories.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I remember when
I
there.
first started doing this, people looked at me like I was crazy. People told me I'll never take that class, or I'll never do that class because of the risk and blah, 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 blah. And now everybody's trying to copy that training.
And I always say it, and Tony knows I say it. You know, you had Pat McNamara out there, you had Tony out there. They were kind of those were the genesis of it all. And you know, so it was happening in a vacuum, but not in a total box.
Right.
And I think what people didn't like about it was change, just like you said. And change becomes dangerous. I think, you know, when we pushed that agenda, what I was trying to explain to brands is these are all customers. We have to stop trying to appeal to the same segment.
Yeah.
Like we said, looking at it like slices of pie. So when you sit down with people, I try to say, okay, there's this great big world out there. The tactical industry is like a speck.
Yeah.
The hunting industry is a little bigger speck. The outdoors industry is a bigger speck. How do you appeal to all these different genres? How do we get a fishing pole out of someone's hand and maybe put a skeet and trap gun in someone's hand? So it's trying to get into these different genres to sell more guns.
And here's another thought. Of those 3 specs of varying sizes, what percentage of those do you think equals to all of gun owners in America? 10%, if that.
10.
You know, so like you said, don't get pigeonholed, because there are lots of other specs out there that you got to be able to market to, and you can't just market to those 3, because as you've brought onto the show, there are tons in the MMA, there are tons in the fitness.
Everyone
that are
in
gun
the MMA,
people, right? They're gun people. They want to buy. They want to get going.
And they're all coming to me. They don't know the first thing about it.
Yep.
What do you think the most underserviced market is? This is an interesting one that we're not paying attention to, without giving away too much syrup. But
right. I mean, for years now, the fastest growing part of the firearms industry has been female shooters. But I'm going to go with rural America. That's what I'm going to say. Because I grew up in a farming community. I grew up on a farm, grew up on a ranch. How much of that type of community takes over the United States? I mean, it's the majority of it. It's all open land. There's all these farming communities, and people are not. I mean, you go out there, somebody's got a hunting rifle, they might have a pistol, and it's always in the truck. But concealed carry's a foreign concept for the most part. Targets, shooting targets, steel targets, anything shooting at metal or anything that could ricochet is not a good idea, because at hunter safety and 12 years old, you get told don't do that.
You're gonna die. We're all gonna die.
Yeah, I don't know. That's out on a limb there, but I would say that, because nobody markets to that community because they already buy a gun, but they're not taking advantage of the full potential, I guess.
I'm gonna make a bold one.
All right.
The black community, and I'm gonna tell you why. I look at guys like Tactical Carl, Black Rambo, people out there that are doing. I've met Tactical Carl. I've talked
Gladiator
to him.
guns.
Mm-hmm. Suresh. I think it's Provictus Group, Suresh at 221B. I've talked to all these guys, and I'm going to tell you why I think that's going to be an undernourished one for a long time. Is a lot of these rooms, and you've been in a lot of them, I'm going to say something. They don't even know where to begin to market to that community.
Yeah.
They don't even know where to begin. They don't know what's going to appeal, what isn't going to appeal, because they're coming in, and, I like a lot of what Tactical Carl's doing. I like what some of these guys are doing. And I know when I came in the business, you had Corleone Noir, dare I say it, but you had him. But that's more of like a manufactured creation. I like to look at guys that are out there doing it and trying to teach and educate and push those envelopes forward on the range. Yeah. Because I think it has to start on the range. And that's something that I think we've always been in agreement about. I think the genesis of this industry is always on the range. Okay, does this work?
Yep.
Whatever it is. Okay. And at the end of the day, I think that's a market that I think has to be serviced.
Yeah.
And has to be fed. As far as the agencies go, or the leadership, NSSF, NRA, I think at some point, one of those has to step up and be the leader that we need. What that looks like and how that plays out, I don't know. And
there's a lot of groups like, say, the NSA or the NRA that are popping up, gun policy, and they're really fighting to be that. But money's what gets you there, right?
A lot of it. Membership, money, everything else. If you could... I want to ask you this. If you could pie in the sky, push one idea out there into the universe, unlimited budget that you'd like to see in the business. You have an unlimited budget, all the resources in the world. What would it be? Would it be a really, truly developed and built out ambassador pro? Like, what would it be? What would be like your dream thing?
I'll tell you. Unlimited budget.
I know what you're going to say. I might have an idea.
You probably got an idea, but I would give the competitive shooting world the recognition that it deserves. Because you go win a national title, it's not the money it should be.
100%.
It's not the money it should be. The exposure for the national championship, it's not the exposure it should be.
100%.
You're talking about world championship shooters. Lena Mitchell, 8-time world champion shooter. 8-time. Max Michel's obviously out of this world. I mean, Carry Optics has existed in USPSA for 5 years, I believe. He hasn't lost. He's a 5 years in a row champ.
It's crazy.
And that's what I would want to do. I would want to go to all of these big area matches, and I would want to have a proper prize table, a proper first, second, third place money they take home. And I would want to have a production that is capable of getting high-end video, of these matches, of these competitive shooters that are top-notch, best in the game, distributed to the industry, to the outdoor industry, to the MMA, to everybody that wants to see that stuff, because they deserve to be in the spotlight more than they are.
I think you've heard my thoughts on this. I think it comes down to being able to get the score properly articulated.
Right.
Because I know, and a lot of people don't talk about this, the NFL grew leaps and bounds the minute they were putting the score on the television. And if you go back to the 50s and 60s, that was very hard to do. Mm-hmm. Now, today, you have all that. Stats, everything. People want to see the score. You have to know where people stand. It's great to swing to a stage, but if you don't know who's in the lead, it doesn't create any drama.
Right.
There's no drama.
Right.
There's no drama if I don't know Max is behind by 1 to JJ or vice versa, and they're fighting for a championship.
I agree with that. And coming into USPSA, my first time 4 or 5 years ago, it was very intimidating because even if I wanted to try and keep score, it was a little too complex for me. Mm-hmm. Right? I understand now, and I'm good to go, but it's got to be more inviting to get to that point. And I've got a story.
Oh, go ahead.
Talking about scores. This is a Max Michel story. Okay. Max is a really close race. National title, national championship in Frostproof, Florida, 2-3 years ago. Max is we're on the third to last stage, I think, on the final day, and it's a close race. Max is in the lead. He's going to take the championship, but it's close. And, I enjoy watching the whole process, not just with Max, but with these elite competitive shooters. They all have their get into their rhythm, their mode. And Max gets ultra focused. Anyway, so long story short, this third to last stage, Max kind of blew it. He kind of blew it. I think there was a door. I can't remember for sure. Something messed up. He threw some Charlies. He missed some shots. Max dropped a couple spots that in that stage. He dropped a couple spots away from, he's whatever. He's competing for the title. He's what's the word when you're defending? There you go. You're defending your championship.
Defending the crown.
So then that very next stage, I'll typically talk to Max in between stages. I kind of follow him around, follow everybody around, and watch him compete because I can't do it on TV. But I didn't talk to Max in between that stage. Mm-hmm. Max is pissed. Max is mad. And he just went straight into his focused mode, which typically is just, 1 or 2 shooters before he gets going. But he spent the whole next stage, the rest of that stage for all the shooters to go through, and the whole next stage until it was his turn in ultra focused mode. He just zoned in. He's stage prepping, right? He's planning out his attack. And honestly, it didn't look like he was going to win after that drop, because he dropped a couple spots. I can't remember how many it was, but he dropped down. And then Max just shot the lights out of that very next stage. Gained it all back to a point where nobody could catch him on the final stage. Like, that's Max Michel.
And how do you duplicate that drama on a stream? Now, you brought up something interesting. You brought up television. I don't think you need
stream.
Yeah, no. I mean, I'm saying, watching just so everybody listening, I don't think you need TV. Now, today, with paywalls and everything else, I think, so if I may, and I think I've told you this, I think one of the giant mistakes the NRA made via the Ackerman McQueen deal and everything else in those years is they imagine if that money was invested in the infrastructure of competitive shooting.
Right.
And imagine if that money was put into that and there was a paywall with the NRA to watch these things. They would be so far ahead of everybody else in the industry in terms of not just gaining membership, but gaining people that want to tune in to watch something. Now, it's neither here nor there. It takes vision.
Yeah. And like you said, on a stream, like you've got to have multiple cameras. You got to have people following this person, and follow the top 3 stories of.
It's a 6-figure production.
Is. Yeah, it's a big deal.
But the way to do it, Jonathan, in my opinion, forget about consolidating IPSC and IDPA. Let's assume that those don't ever get consolidated. Let's just do this. If you create it almost like the NASCAR, you create it like the chase for the cup.
Yeah.
That's the way you have to go, because if you do it like that, then you can say the last 5 matches are streamed, meaning like the run for the roses here, almost like that.
Right.
Because there are sports that set precedent that do that. You look at the Kentucky Derby, the Belmont Stakes, so on and so forth. You look at some of these sports that they don't have major television coverage throughout the year. Unless you go to like the Golf Network, you really don't see golf unless it's the Masters or the U.S. Open or so on. You can do stuff like that where you can gain a certain amount of attention, a certain amount of interest if it's set up the right way. Like, I like how NASCAR becomes the sprint for the cup.
Yeah.
Okay? And I know that they're a bad example right now for a few reasons, but I think that there's something there. You can learn from that model. I've always said, you had an interesting one. You had a formula for a tournament style,
right,
which I like because it incorporates elements of MMA and which I enjoy, because then it starts to get dicey. That's why I always like the PFL Fighting League, because they have this $1 million prize at the top, and it becomes like a run for the roses almost.
Yep.
I've said it, and it's been something Tony and I have floated around for a long time, and we've talked about. The tactical games is interesting to me.
Yeah.
Because I think if you got the right prizes together and you get people out there in that competitive environment, money talks. And I think the real way to kick it off, like in the early days of the X Games, for example, one of the reasons the X Games was able to gain the steam that it gained is they got all these guys that were making these back alley videos. You remember old skateboarding videos, old rollerblade videos, whatever, bike videos, everything. It was all like back alley. These people had never got together and had a true competition. It had never happened. Right. There was no precedent for it. And then the X Games comes along. And now, what I always say, lack of better words, I know you don't like this language, but the pussies come out of the woodwork because you put the money up.
Yeah.
And once the money's up, everybody comes out of the woodwork.
Right.
So now the X Games happens. So all these guys that have been making back alley videos got to come forward. So I said the real way to kick this off is if you put a $25,000 or $50,000 prize out there, you're going to see some guys come out of the woodwork.
And that helps everybody. Mm-hmm. Looking at every league that's expanded, when the NBA became really popular, basketball flourished everywhere. China's grown like crazy because of the NBA. Then just soccer in the United States has grown like crazy over the last decade because the MLS got more attention, got more traction. You have to promote the competitive national league to be able to get that younger generation, that upcoming generation, dialed in and excited about becoming what the next guy was, wanting to be the next Max Michel, wanting to be the next Michelle Scusi, Ashley Rurik, Lena Michalik, Joe Farewell, all these competitive shooters that have run the game for these last.
And listen, we all know the competitive shooters are the best, but the reason I say the tactical games to kick it off is because I think everybody would love to see all the instructors go at it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Now, there's some that we're getting too old. There's some out there that, would make better commentators or whatever. The time has passed some by. Yeah. But I think that would be so great for the sport, and that would be the segue to the competitive world.
It seems like it's been getting some good traction over the last 2 years as well.
Yeah.
Tactical game.
But I think that the only way they make a big splash is if they go after the competitors. And they always say, like, well, we've asked them. Yeah, the prize money is what's going to do it.
That's what talks.
If I call you and I say, Jonathan, there's $50,000 in a bag.
Right.
100. You're walking with 100.
Yeah.
You'll see people.
Anyone who thinks they have a shot will go and will compete for that because that's prize money. I mean, well, the 3-gun national championship used to do a $25,000 prize table for the winner, top prize. They don't anymore, but That's what the tournament style I was trying to think of. You know, it wasn't USPSA, it wasn't IDPA, it wasn't 3-gun. It was kind of a combination of everything. You got points, and it was just like the fastest time, right? Because that's what you've got to go off to get an easier score. That's easy for Joe Schmo to understand who's winning after this stage and who's winning after the next stage. And then you get companies to throw in a prize table. Because you need a pot. You need something to entice people to get going on it. And excited.
You know, and the tactical games is going the long route, which is fine too. You know, I get it. I just worry that it's kind of going the way of like almost like a SWAT roundup, which already exists. And that's where you fall into the trap. You see what I'm saying? You have to get some of the instructors out and some of the personalities out. And the only way to do that, because the only way they're going to come out of the woodwork is cha-ching. Cha-ching. That's the only way. That would be an interesting segue into what you're talking about, the competitive world. Because then once you do that once, it was like X Games 1 and 2. Once they did 1 and 2, it kind of paid homage to all the guys who've been doing it for years on the street.
Yeah.
And then also kind of it was time for like the real competitors to step up. Like by the time Tony Hawk had been competing in X Games, he was been on the street for years doing it. It was kind of like, you know, the other guys were starting to come in that sort of game the game, if you will. They knew how to game the competitive world. But everybody knew who like the original kings of the street were. It's like who's the kings of street basketball and this and that. And there's a lot of guys on the range that teach and do things effectively, but I think people would want to see them come out and compete in a competitive environment.
I mean, kings of the street. You're from Boston. You're from the East Coast, so there's a lot more street ball going on over there. I grew up in rural Utah.
Well, I think when you grow up in a Boston,
we had street ball.
Yeah, I think when you grow up in a Boston, Chicago, LA, Miami, you always want to settle it on the street, right? It's kind of like you always want to see who the best of the best is, and there's only one way to do that. And listen, you've been around me a long time. I'm very real when it comes to like time eventually is undefeated. It beats us all. Yeah. And, you know, I've gotten too long in the tooth, and some guy, you know, it's kind of you reach a point where it's other people's time. But I think that there's be a lot of fun to see a lot of people, and that would take tremendous amount of ego to be set aside, and that's the hard part too. There's a lot of that, but I like the idea, and I like where your head's at. And if there was all the money in the world in a duffel bag right now, it would definitely be something I'd want to pursue. I told you I'd pursue it with you. I've told you that offline.
Right.
I mean, it would be a tremendous opportunity, you know?
Yeah, just like I said, I mean, the competitive shooting league doesn't get enough exposure. They don't get the prize money that they should get, and that's just because there's not enough attention to it. And companies are, again, focused on their ROI so hard. They're like, well, what's supporting USPSA going to get me right away? You know, like that's.
You know what I always find funny about that argument? I'm going to say something that I hope people listening it resonates with. What's the ROI on Rogue sponsoring CrossFit games? I don't know the answer to that, right? But there's a lot of fucking equipment there, right? And there's a huge investment there. Yeah. But I think the way Rogue looks at it is they're positioned as the premier leader in that space, right?
Yeah.
So I think, you know, to your point, you have to find brands that are like-minded, that are willing to think in that vein of, I want to be the premier, I want to be the best. When you think of basketball shoes, you think of Nike, you think of Jordans. There's a reason for that. It's been ingrained.
Yeah.
And we haven't had a brand in the firearms business yet take the steps to do that. You see it in pockets with SIG. You see it in pockets with Glock. You see it in pockets with certain brands. Yeah. But there's still a long ways to go, to your point. How it gets there, we don't know. But I think that there's so much growth to be had. And that's the exciting part, is how you get that growth. When you look out into social media, everything, because you're really good at finding people and finding people that you're like, this person's going to be successful, or this might be the next big thing, or whatever. What do you see when you look out in the marketplace, and what are you looking for when somebody wants to be, quote unquote, sponsored or an ambassador? What advice do you give them? It's a loaded one, but
yeah. First of all, look for content. Content is king. If they're putting out content, consistent content, if somebody lives on the range, that makes it a lot easier for them to get content when they're trying to get that content, right? Content, and then just an intelligent person that's competent, able to use a firearm, whether you're a competitive shooter or whether you're a firearms trainer, whether you're just Joe that likes to go to the range and shoot and train and get better, perfect the craft. Man, as far as to try and get sponsored by companies, it's all about the content that you put out and whether that content is going to be valuable in promotion, whether it's on social media or just long lasting.
Is just having Instagram enough anymore?
No. Very rare. In cases, in certain spots, people are still being successful with that, but that's at the same time, that's because of relationships they've built. And you said this earlier, and I didn't touch on it, but relationships is the most important part of anything I do, hands down. Instagram's not enough. I don't think so.
Is just taking a photo enough anymore?
No. You got to be able to articulate on camera, video, demonstrate what you're doing. I mean, that's why I love Amy 556 content so much. Amy 556, she's just a great instructor that wants to help improve the shooting community, whether that's Joe in Arkansas that wants to go on the range and goes to her website, gets a drill, gets another drill, works on those two things that week, and she comes out with new drills, but she's always demonstrating that on her Instagram. Now, Amy is only Instagram. Besides her website, she's got a website, but she is constantly putting out content that is just nuggets of training wisdom that helps maybe not your advanced shooter, but it's going to help the majority of the industry.
It's the collective.
Yeah.
I think I've been outspoken about this. I think the women of the industry could rule the world. I think they're a couple years behind the men, and I think a lot of that is a confidence thing in the conversations I've had with them. Because if they could ever take it to YouTube successfully, if they could ever take it to those different platforms, the consumables are good and the messaging is good, and everybody wants to watch them over a guy any day of the week and twice on Sunday, for the most part. Right. And there's no reason why they couldn't really stake a huge claim into the universe. Now, I think whether it's people like Amy Robbins that are developing women for women's brands and things like that, right. I think that has to forge ahead. But I think that if they can get their, I guess you'd say, act together or get dialed in to understand those different platforms, like you're saying, because you have to open up a new front. You can't fight a war on one front. You have to have Instagram, YouTube, a couple other things, maybe a really rockin' website with some stuff behind it, right. Something there, a blog, whatever. But it can't be just one thing. If it's just one thing, it's not enough. And I think that's what holds them back or hurts them the most right now. I look at, in so many ways, some of the people out there that have such unlimited potential. And you bring up Amy as a good example. There's so many with just unlimited potential. Yeah. And sure. It's whether or not they want to tap into it and harness it. Now, again, is it the brand's responsibility to push them over the top? Is it their own responsibility? Is it a combination? Is it us as an industry? Rising tides raise all ships. How do you pull all the weight of it up? And I think it's just a matter of time, understanding who these platforms speak to and what they are, and if you're building a community, and understanding that sometimes the content needs to be analyzed. And there's not enough looking in the mirror and saying, I really need to be doing this, or I need to articulate that better. And that's everybody. That's men and women. Yeah. It's being able to do that and transcend and start to kick it to the next level, whatever that next level looks like. Now, with that being said, there's so many great folks out there that come up to us, and we deal with it constantly. You deal with it. And they say, I really want to get over. For lack of better words, they're trying to get over. How do I get over? And what's the answer to that? And what does getting over look like? And that's the hardest part, is how we explain to some of these people why they might be a fit or why they might not be a fit. And that's evolved. That's been a moving target in the business for years. You've done always a great job curating good people and developing them. But I think understanding content and understanding how the development of content and how that looks is always a struggle. It's always going to be a struggle.
Yeah, for sure.
And not going to be easy.
But as we move forward as an industry, that content is a very important piece.
Yeah, I agree. I think that will never stop the people saying, how do I get here, or how do I get to the next level, or how do I get to the, whatever that brass ring looks like, because that's still evolving, whether it's in the gaming space or whatever it is, whether they want to be a personality with a company and strategically aligned. All those things are moving targets. But that's a lot of what happens day to day at a show, and the phone calls and the things that you deal with. Jonathan, I really want to be on the team, or I want to be a part of what you're doing. How do I get free stuff, is what it boils down to. And you always try to dispense a little bit of that wisdom on everybody. And the hard part is it takes some looking in the mirror. It takes some understanding what the market's calling for. And at the end of the day, nobody likes drama. So if it's a drama it's just kind of like, you're going to be like, I don't want to deal with this. And that's one of the things, that you have to explain. But to create a true growth model, you got to be on multiple fronts.
Yeah.
So, listen, you're one of my oldest friends in the business. It's not something I take lightly. But I think, for the most part, you and I have been at the forefront of a lot of this and where this goes. And I look at us and have looked at us for a long time, and some other people in that group, as being kind of the younger buckaroos, if you will, that are trying to, forge this industry forward. And I thank you for that, being one of those guys and trying to get it to the next level and articulate that and explain that to some of the gray hair in the room sometimes, which is never easy, which is always a struggle. So for that, I really do thank you.
Hey, no problem.
It means a lot. And it's not easy. Let everybody know where they can find you, how they can contact you, and how they can maybe reach out for your services, if you will.
Hey, there we go. Thatmarketingguy.com. No, thatmarketingguyjohnny.com. Sorry, just building the website right now. So thatmarketingguyjohnny.com. We'll put the link down below. Yep, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm trying to do stuff for myself, go out on my own, and just consult with many different brands, because that's a lot more fun than just having the one primary. So,
I wonder where you got that from.
I don't know.
I wonder where
man's John Bartolo.
No. That's a good term. That's the truth. There's only one me, and I'm in a world on my own.
Yeah.
I'm in my own world.
That's for sure. Hey, it's a great setup, though. The studio's awesome. You've really got a great
Listen,
here, John.
We could talk shit. I love it. But I am in a world on my own, to everybody listening. Not for everybody. If you want, actually, instead of saying poor man's, if you want the gentler, kinder version, more willing to do the things that I won't, contact that marketing guy, Johnny.com, for sure. And to every brand out there, I want him to hear this. I've said it 100 times. Jonathan is, hands down to me, one of the best guys at developing a brand from the sales side on the marketing side. And that's something I'm not skilled at all. So to anybody listening, if they ever viewed you or I as competitors or as people in this, we are not in the same space.
Yeah, I know.
At all.
No.
But there's only one Elvis.
What?
I love it.
I need to grab a donut.
Listen, we're going to have some donuts. I appreciate you coming in. And the list of brands you've worked with through the years is too long and extensive, but phenomenal. And the list of people's even fucking better. But I applaud you for that. You're a lot like me in that sense. You love to work with everybody and hear different opinions, and you're much more open-minded than I am. So,
man, just blessed to meet the people that I have, blessed to have relationships with the people that I have in the industry. It's the best part, hands down. And I mean, I don't care where I'm at or what company I'm working for. That's going to be the part that keeps me in the industry, is just being able to interact with such great people. Absolutely.
And I would safely say that nobody makes fun of themselves more than you or I do.
Yeah.
So to anyone out there that thinks we take ourselves too seriously, we do not at all. So I think that's a misnomer. I think that, we're always open to ideas and to anything that anybody wants to spit or throw at us. So I appreciate you taking the time, telling the story, sharing everything. I'll put your link down below. Is the website up?
Ish.
It's coming. So reach out. And Instagram.
Yeah, that marketing guy, Johnny Doc, or
at.
Yeah.
The at. All right, listen.
New to social media.
New to social media. I got it. I appreciate everyone. I appreciate everyone taking the time. I want to thank the sponsors. I want to thank Gallo Technologies for the walls behind us, Rhino Metals for the tables below us. I want to thank Blackwater Ammunition, Galco Leather Holsters, Right On Optics, and, of course, Volquartsen Firearms. Can't thank them enough. Pink Box Donuts. We're going to have a lot of donuts today. We're going to have a party. Dope. I appreciate everybody. I appreciate everybody taking the time. Go check out that marketing guy, Johnny. Put the links down below.